Father Christmas is the 10th episode of the second season of Frasier. This is directed by the wonderful Kelsey, and as always there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. It's not as funny as the previous season's Christmas episode, but it is a lot more emotional. Also, I do want to clear something up. At one point, somebody points out that they say Happy Christmas in England, not Merry Christmas, and I just want to say that's not completely true. I say Merry Christmas. A lot of people do say Happy Christmas, but I just wanted to clear that up, that not all of us say Happy Christmas. That aside, the episode is very festive and very moving, but as I said, it's not as good as the previous episode, the previous Christmas episode, rather. It starts off at Mahoney's. Alan is saying bah humbug, and we find out that he's not just bah humbugging because he's Alan, but also because his daughter is in town. And obviously he really wants to see his daughter, but she doesn't want a relationship with him. And Freddy tells Frasier not to meddle, which basically is like giving Frasier permission to meddle. We have a couple of subplots. Olivia getting slippers for Christmas, so she believes, and she's trying to get Frasier a great gift, and that part of it felt like it didn't conclude very well. We also have part of the narrative, Roz, Eve, and David working on this village. I loved David's Christmas jumper. He was fabulous in this, and I loved the design of the houses. Roz being in this, yet again, feels really forced. Not that I'm not happy she's in it. I love Roz, I love Peri Gilpin, but they're kind of just shoehorning the character in without any real explanation. So in the third season, which I hope we do, and I assume Roz would be in it as a main character, I hope they kind of give a better reason for why she's around all of the time. Because I do like her, but it's not exactly very well written. Nevertheless, it doesn't affect my enjoyment of the episode. And Alan is at the bar with Freddy. Freddy cannot drink as much as Alan can. And Holly happens to mention that she's getting off of her shift soon, but Frasier had told Alan that she finishes at 11. And Holly confesses to Alan that it's just all a bit too much for her at the moment. Frasier has gone all in. She wants to take it a bit more slow. She was nervous with him inviting her to his Christmas party. And I said this when we first met Holly, and I'll say it again. As much as I love Patricia Heaton, and I'd love to see her in the next season, if we get another season, I don't think Holly is right for Frasier. So I'm torn between wanting what's right for Frasier and wanting Patricia Heaton. So we'll see what happens if there's a third season, if she's in it. And Alan tells Holly, and I loved this quote, "Nobody loves with a bigger heart than Frasier Crane." I absolutely love that. And one could argue that that's why he meddled, because he loves Alan as a friend and wanted to do the best for him. So he ends up hatching this plan to meddle. He finds out the hotel where Nora is staying and bumps into her accidentally. She's played by Rayne. And unfortunately, Alan does come into the room at that point because he'd been drinking at the bar. It's the hotel where Holly works. Everything connects very well. And honestly, the exchange is difficult to listen to. And it ends with Nora saying, "I don't want you in my life." And yes, if she's hurt, she's entitled to say that, but it's hard to hear, particularly knowing just how much Alan wants a relationship with his daughter. It's very difficult. I'm getting quite emotional, and it was very well done, but not an easy scene. And then we have a beautifully written exchange between Frasier and Alan when Frasier goes to Alan and apologizes to him for meddling, and it was very well written. It's a beautiful exchange, but also hard to watch because Alan usually is very flippant with a lot of things and makes a lot of dry remarks and is very funny. And while I do believe he takes his career seriously, it often comes across as he doesn't take things seriously. So when he is being serious and somber, that's difficult to watch. And I'm not saying every Christmas episode has to be jolly and delightful, but compared to the previous Christmas episode, it's a lot heavier. That doesn't necessarily mean it's worse, but it's not as entertaining from a jolly Merry Christmas perspective. See, I do say Merry Christmas, and it's very well written, but it's a different experience. And Freddy decides to take a leaf out of his father's book, and he actually goes to talk with Nora. He does his own meddling, but he talks with her because he had a similar experience. And this is really interesting because I never really knew Freddy felt quite this way, because he was annoyed at his father for moving across the country to take up this job at the radio station. And this is something I have thought about. Cheers is perfection. I prefer Cheers to Frasier, but they're both amazing. But Cheers, if you haven't seen Cheers, I won't ruin it, but basically for Frasier to then move to Seattle, it would mean leaving behind everything he had at Cheers. And that includes, well, maybe it was a good thing to move away from Lilith, but that includes Frederick and his friends and his comfort. And I do often wonder just how easily he made that decision, or whether he felt like he had nothing left in Boston, and it must have hurt Freddy. And this scene definitely explains this, but I never really thought about just how much that would have affected him as a young boy, where his father has ostensibly a radio career over his son. But as I said, Frasier was going through a lot at the time. There are a lot of bad memories of Frasier in Boston, so it's quite interesting that he's back there again. It's as a Cheers fan, I find it to be a very interesting experience. I'm going off on a tangent. I shouldn't talk about Cheers when I'm talking about Frasier, because get me started about Cheers and I don't shut up. But either way, it was an interesting scene with Freddy saying these things, and he could relate to what Nora was feeling at the time. And he said some things that she really needed to hear, but I also love the fact that he made it clear that things would happen in her time. He never said, well, I got over it and I have a relationship with my father, so you should do the same. He was very much just saying, maybe at some point you might actually want that relationship. And then we're at Frasier's apartment. Everything's decorated for Christmas. Everybody's there. Absolutely gorgeous. Alice is there. And then Holly turns up, which I quite liked. And then Nora arrives. And it's so beautiful. And as I said, it's not as funny as the previous Christmas episode, but this scene, this moment, I'm genuinely getting emotional thinking about it. Nora arrives. Obviously, Alan is, well, I was going to say delighted, but I think that's not the strongest emotion. I think he's shocked. I don't think it's sunk in at that point. And then she shows him his granddaughter. And it's so beautiful. And the joy and relief and probably confusion, because this all came out of nowhere, that Alan felt was just so beautiful to witness. And it was a really gorgeous end to the show. So, not the funniest episode, but easily one of the most moving and heartfelt. And I really thoroughly enjoyed it. Personal highlights, I guess the opening scene in Mahoney's, I definitely quite like that one. And Alan's line, nobody loves with a bigger heart than Frasier Crane. And the character of Nora as well. Obviously, this is a brief introduction. I don't know if she'll appear in the third season, if we get a third season. But I liked the character. I liked what they did with her. I thought she was a very well-written character. And just Alan in general, I thought was a really brilliant highlight. Father Christmas is a really great episode. A really solid end to the second season of Frasier. My fingers are crossed so tightly that we get a third season. I expect we will. I predict we will, particularly as the seasons are quite short. So if they do commission a third season, they're not committing to 20-something episodes. Though if they want to do that, I'd be very happy with that. Father Christmas is a beautiful episode and a great end to a brilliant second season.